Welcome to Monday, December 22nd, 2025, your DayWeather Podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, do not face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at wyomingadvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, as this Christmas week goes, if you're in the west, you're cool and wet. If you're east of the divide, you're warm and dry. And we're going to continue to see this pattern, at least here for the next 4 to 5 days or so, as a pretty impressive storm is going to bring a lot of wet weather to the west coast. There will be significant rain, possible flooding in California, parts of Arizona, parts of the Great Basin, the Pacific Northwest again, and this moisture will spread along in west of the divide as the week goes on. But the storm in this blocking pattern is going to move extremely slowly. So if you're front range, if you're east of the Continental Divide, you're not going to have as much wind, thankfully. We don't have any big wind storms queued up for this week, which I think will make everybody happy. But if you want a white Christmas east of the divide, you're going to have to watch something on TV, because while it will be cool and wet and white west of the divide, warm and dry east of the divide through Christmas Day. Now, as we get into Friday and the weekend, what's left of that California storm, because it's going to come in a weakened state, is going to pass through the Rockies. So this may bring a little bit of weather, especially to the mountains, and some colder temperatures, cooler temperatures to the plains, but nothing Arctic by any means. But there will be a bit of a change in the weather the weekend after Christmas. And the blocking patterns, I tell you folks, I haven't seen a blocking situation like this in a long time. But it's just making huge impacts on the weather. Blocks can go two ways. Blocks can stick you into a pattern of warm and dry. They can stick you in a pattern of very cold and very snowy. But it all depends on where the blocks are, where they're setting up, and where they want to persist. But it's really making a giant impact on the weather across North America, and especially the western high plains, and especially the Intermountain West. And we'll kind of take a look at that here in a little bit more detail in a moment. So you can see the bighorn sheep don't have any snow to push away, can get to the grass. Now we are seeing some beautiful cloudscapes, especially with the sunrises and sunsets, with a lot of these high and mid-level clouds casting a pink and orange glow, blue glows in the evening, the mornings, and those sunrises and sunsets all across the region. On the first day of winter yesterday, astronomical winter, meteorological winter started December 1st. So I guess if we can't have snow, we can have pretty sunrises and sunsets across the region, which we certainly have been seeing all across the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains. Some nice lenticulars there around Gunnison, Colorado. And now I think if there's any video to sum up what we've seen over the last couple of weeks in many areas, it's this one. Ryan there picking up I don't know, we can't call it a dust devil. We'll call it a tumbleweed devil. You can see that the wind's howling across that ridgetop, organizing the tumbleweeds. Those aren't tumbling tumbleweeds, those are airborne tumbleweeds. So I think that video sums up what we've seen here over the last couple of weeks. As we start the week, something looks similar. We continue to have a pipeline of Pacific moisture coming in. What's remarkable about the last couple of weeks is all the available Pacific moisture that's been coming off the West Coast into Western North America. But the pattern is such that there's just a large part of the West and the central United States that's not getting any of it. It's going into the Pacific Northwest and California. They're getting plenty of snow up into Canada. And we have this deep low that continues to spin around because of the blocking pattern off the coast of British Columbia. This pipeline of moisture, and it's very impressive off the Pacific, and you can really see it here on the satellite imagery. This is just going to laser focus Pacific moisture right into California and the Great Basin states and parts of the northern Rockies. So you can see the feed of moisture here in the precipitable water. It's coming all the way from north of Hawaii all the way into the Intermountain West. This focus into the higher terrain of California is going to produce a lot of precipitation. So if you look at the 500 millibar chart for today, this semi-permanent, and that's really how it's been, low pressure off the coast of western British Columbia and the blocking high in the Aleutians, well, that's how we start the week. But through the course of the week, this slowly meanders south and goes along the west coast and doesn't come in like this. It just comes south because the pattern's getting squeezed by the block. So the low wants to come down this way. We have out ahead of it, with all that Pacific moisture, we have flooding concerns for Las Vegas, parts of western Arizona, and the deserts of California. Then we have winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings for the Sierras, the Cascades. Some of that moisture will bring more snow to northwestern Wyoming's mountains and the mountains of Montana. And yeah, we'll have a little bit of wind along the I-80 corridor. But you can see there's a large swath right here where nothing is really happening weather-wise. Because by Wednesday, in 2 days, all the low does, it gets elongated north-south. So it will continue to drive moisture into California, while this big broad high develops over Texas, and the clockwise flow will bring very mild air from the south, a little bit of a downsloping effect from those westerly winds. So what's going to happen is you're just going to have some very warm temperatures for this part of the United States as we get into Christmas week, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in particular, while it gets very wet west of the Continental Divide because of this very slow-moving low-pressure system. Now, this is by Thursday. So by Thursday, well, there's a little consolidation of the low, but notice it's more north-south. It's not wanting to move west, from west to east at all. But we do see some lower heights. So if we compare Wednesday to Thursday, you see how it does get colder here from Christmas Eve to Christmas Day. And then as we get into the time frame of after Christmas Day, we'll see that low come off the west coast, albeit in a weakened state. So extremely impressive rain for California, Southern California. That southern flow hits that east-west part of California. So you're going to get some heavy rain north of LA especially. Really good snow in the Sierra Nevada. Significant rain in Las Vegas. So yes, Las Vegas for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day will be considerably cooler than Denver. Go figure. And that's going to produce more moisture, so you can see along and west of the divide, but you have this big hole because the low won't head east. It's stuck. Colder shots go into the Great Lakes and the New England area, and the middle part of the country is nada, zip zero. That takes us through Christmas Day. Now, beyond Christmas Day, we'll see that west coast low begin to push. So through Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, snow levels are very high because of that warm fetch of air coming off the Pacific. You just don't have any Canadian air into the system. It's all Pacific. Now, the higher elevations in the mountains will do quite well. Look at those snow totals there in the Sierra Nevada. You're going to have feet of snow there in this pattern. Now, as we get into Saturday, the low finally begins to move. We still have the block, but this little low squeezes in here, which kicks this low east. But you see how it's splitting? It's splitting. And if it splits as it comes over the divide, it just doesn't have anything left. At least it doesn't have much left to do anything for this part of the country here of any consequence. So even when you get a low to come in, it splits. And you still have this robust high here. But there will be cooler air and some moisture coming in Friday and Saturday and into Sunday across the Intermountain West, and there will be a bit of a cool down. But there's not an Arctic connection at all. So it's just going to be cooler. It's not cold. Now I'm going to come back to this in a minute here. The block near Greenland is forming. The block in the Aleutians is still there. We've got double blocks setting up. And when we look at the pattern, overall big picture, we kind of showed you this, but basically this is through Sunday. So you can see systems are coming into the Great Lakes in New England. Storm brings very big moisture to areas west of the divide, overrunning snows in Canada. But if you're here, you're just out of luck. You're just completely out of luck because the blocking pattern is causing this area of dryness and warmth to be on the lee of the Rockies in the central United States. And that pattern is extremely stubborn. It has been for the last several weeks. It's going to be that way for another week. So let's talk a little bit more about this block, because until these blocks change or get eliminated, we're going to be in a static situation where the overall general trends in the weather aren't going to change much for at least another couple of weeks. So this is as of today. Here's the omega pattern, where we have this high in the Aleutians and we have this semi-permanent low off the west coast of British Columbia, which basically keeps high pressure from the Continental Divide and points east. Now, there will be changes, and if we loop this over 15 days, I'm going to put all of this into motion. So what I want you to do is watch right here, where we generally have the ridge and where we generally have the low here. Basically, here and here is what you want to watch the most. So let's put it in motion, and you can see that the block does go through some changes, but you see how it still generally wants to be in the Aleutians with the brighter red colors, and especially where you see those circles there of the closed high pressure ridge. So yes, the block will go through some gyrations, and occasionally something will get pushed through. But what this does is this keeps Pacific air dominant on the western side of the country. And when the Pacific air is moist and stormy, well, you are going to get rain in the Pacific Northwest and snows in the mountains of the far west, but you're not going to push it into the inner mountain west. And you're certainly not going to bring any Arctic air into the equation. Now, this is the Pacific blocking pattern. This takes us all the way, I think, through January 5th. Let's go out in the Atlantic. We had talked last week about a Greenland block forming. And if you pay attention up here, look at more often than not, you see the high pressure ridge coming into there. So what will happen is the colder air from Canada is going to come into the Great Lakes in New England. It's going to parts of Europe and far eastern Europe in particular. So what ends up happening is you have these cold, wet pockets, dry, warm pocket, cold, wet pocket, and these just kind of go around the globe. And by the time you put it back together, then you've got the warmer, drier pocket right here. So we have a double blocking system that is setting up. So it is really hard. A very stubborn weather pattern to get out of. Now, one thing we've talked about in earlier podcasts was the quasi-biennial oscillation being in place this winter in a negative phase, an easterly phase. And one thing historically, it does favor blocking patterns. Now, we didn't see the blocking patterns this intense in other QBOs in years past, but boy, these blocking patterns are a lot more intense and a lot more robust and stubborn than we've seen in years past, and we'll just have to keep an eye on them to anticipate any bigger changes in the long term. There you have it. We'll have more for you tomorrow. Have a good Monday.